Good morning. This is Dr. Marc Ellis. He's the head of the Jewish Studies Department here at Baylor University, and he is honoring us this morning by sharing some insightful thoughts to some questions that we have for him concerning Scriptures 1 for Truett. And in Scriptures 1 we study the first 5 books of the Bible and then also up through 2 Kings in the chronological Old Testament that Christians use. So good morning once again. And I'd like to start off saying thank you very much for your time. It is greatly appreciated. Your insight is greatly appreciated. The time we've spent before has been enlightening, and I'm sure as we go forward in relationship, it will continue to grow deeper and more insightful. So thank you very much. We'll jump right in. And starting off with Genesis 1 and 2, we have a couple of different creation stories. How do you understand the creation stories in Genesis 1 and 2, and what is the relevance for a Jew today?
Well, I think obviously the creation stories are myths of creation, and they're not central to the Hebrew Bible in the sense, at least that I think, that Exodus is. And it seems to be a projection back from the Exodus about how did we get to that point? So I certainly don't see it as the way the world was created. But there are stories within Genesis that, of course, are very, very important to Jewish life and Jewish history. So it's not really a question of whether they're historically verifiable, but how the narrative was created and how the narrative has lived in Jewish history. So that's what I would say about maybe the Bible in general, and Genesis in particular.
As far as the creation narrative itself, understanding that there's no necessarily scientific means behind it, Christians would definitely see that God is behind creation, and comparing that to other stories of ancient Near East, creation, just the differences therein, that God is the creator. He's behind this, not some other being or entity. It is a loving God, and we see hints of love in his creation as opposed to, out of other Hindu or Buddhist creation stories, it's kind of out of fault or out of anger that the gods end up creating another world that humans end up being a part of. Is that love behind the creation story, is that central at all or important in Jewish theology?
Well, the idea, of course, in Orthodox Jewish life that God created the world is central, and also interpreted in the rabbinic tradition, including questions about the creation. But if you're asking me if I know that God is behind creation, I don't know.
Okay. So is that kind of a difference between maybe Reformed and traditional?
Well, I'm not a Reformed Jew. I grew up in the conservative Jewish tradition. I don't know how relevant these distinctions are today. But I don't think, obviously as you move on the spectrum of Jewish life, you have more and more interpretation. But Orthodox Judaism is not fundamentalist. It's also interpretation. But they would obviously be more strongly toward the reality of the Bible as truth. And as you move on, it would be more and more mythic. But I'm not sure at all that the claim of truth is more important or substantial than the mythic sensibilities which also inform human life. I'm not sure that those who claim truth are closer to it.
Interesting.
They may be further away sometimes.